America has the highest addiction rates.
Americans account for 80% of the world's opioid consumption.
Almost 500,000 Americans have died in the last 15 years from an overdose.
Overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50.
So how did we get here? Well, pharmaceutical companies intentionally got America addicted in order to profit off of prescription sales. I'm going to expose all the evil practices happening behind our backs, and you'll see how truly up our medical industry is. So let's start off with the one company that's responsible for our entire opioid crisis. This company made $35 billion by selling a substance that killed over 500,000 Americans. And get this, the perpetrators never got prison time. This company is Purdue Pharma. Let me tell you all the evil things they've done. Our story begins with Arthur Sackler. He was a physician and an advertising genius. His marketing talent could be seen early on in his campaigns for terramycin, an antibiotic. His strategies involved relentless print ads, direct mail, and phone calls to physicians. This will play a large role in the success of opioids. Later on, Arthur's brothers Mortimer and Raymond followed him into the pharmaceutical business, and together they acquired the Purdue Frederick Company in 1952. In the 1960s, they began selling tranquilizers like Librium and Valium. Not only were they highly successful, but they normalized the mass prescription of psychoactive substances, creating a cultural acceptance of pills as a solution to everyday problems.
Red, white, and blue pills. Has America become a land of strong pills and weak people?
This laid the groundwork for the future success of opioid painkillers. In 1996, Purdue Pharma developed and patented Oxycontin, a very strong painkiller, making them the first company to sell opioid painkillers. They marketed this substance as a safer and less addictive alternative to other opioids because its coating allowed the substance to be absorbed over time rather than instantly, reducing its potency. But this is BS. Internal documents revealed that Purdue Pharma was well aware of Oxycontin's addictive nature, writing that the coating could be easily bypassed by crushing or chewing the pills. I'll go in depth on how dangerous these pills are later in the video. Despite the obvious evidence of addiction and thousands dying from overdosing on the substance, Purdue Pharma continued to market the substance heavily. After 2007, Purdue Pharma launched the Evolve to Excellence campaign, which encouraged doctors to prescribe higher doses of Oxycontin. And the crazy thing is, this campaign worked incredibly well. By 2016, Purdue Pharma had generated $31 billion in sales. This was done through a variety of marketing strategies, which downplayed the risks of the substance. Here's one example.
They don't wear out, they go on working, they do not have serious medical side effects. And so these, which I repeat are our best, strongest pain medications, should be used much more than they are for patients in pain.
Purdue Pharma normalized opioid treatment for minor problems like back pain or dental procedures. Opioid painkillers became extremely popular, being sold at abundant pain clinics that resembled fast food chains. The Time magazine claimed that in Broward County, there were more pain clinics than McDonald's. This would turn entire regions into epicenters for addiction, because painkillers were so accessible to everyone. However, starting from 2018, Purdue Pharma began getting flooded with lawsuits, and on September 15, 2019, Purdue filed for bankruptcy. In 2020, the US Department of Justice penalized Purdue Pharma and extracted $8.3 billion from the company. It took 24 years of death and suffering before Purdue Pharma was finally punished. The deadly effects of Oxycontin were apparent from the start, which raises the question, how did Purdue Pharma get away with killing so many Americans for so long? Well, the answer is because many other entities helped aid the sales of Oxycontin, and one of the most influential entities is none other than the FDA. Decades before Oxycontin was launched, the dangers of opioids were highly researched through pharmacological studies, and these dangers were heavily documented in several official medical texts. With these dangers in mind, there is absolutely no logical reason why the FDA would ever approve of this for prescription use. But in 1995, the Sackler family met with Curtis Wright, the former head of the FDA. Very little is known about what happened during their negotiation, but over the course of 3 days, the Sackler family convinced Curtis to give them the stamp of approval, and just like that, Oxycontin was FDA approved. This also paved the way for other companies like Johnson & Johnson and Allergan to begin manufacturing opioids. To make matters even worse, the FDA would later on approve the use of Oxycontin for children.
Children as young as 11 years old will now be able to receive the powerful and commonly abused painkiller Oxycontin.
And despite the opioid crisis and the overwhelming evidence of opioid harm, the FDA still has not revoked approval for opioids, and these are still being widely prescribed in the US to this day. And besides the FDA, the US Department of Justice is also to blame. Before the government crackdown in 2020, the US Department of Justice had every right to punish Purdue Pharma for its misleading marketing tactics and shady practices. But the Department of Justice only penalized the company once, which happened in 2007, with a $600 million fine after the Sackler family pleaded guilty to criminal charges for misleading the public. $600 million is nothing, considering Purdue Pharma was making billions annually at that time. If the US had intervened earlier and stronger, hundreds of thousands of lives would have been saved. And even after the government crackdown in 2020, not a single member of the Sackler family received prison time, and the fines that the Sacklers received is only a fraction of the money they profited from Oxycontin sales, meaning they never really faced any serious punishment. Now, even though Purdue Pharma is directly responsible for the opioid crisis, they are only one part in a much larger, evil, and greedy industry responsible for America's addiction. And opioids aren't the only dangerous being prescribed. You see, America's medical industry is run by shady and corrupt companies and doctors who value selling over lives. There's a common term in the medical industry called pill mills, which describes a doctor or facility that deliberately overprescribes drugs to make more money. According to the BMJ, the top 1% of providers accounted for 49% of all opioid doses and 27% of all opioid prescriptions. Stanford Medicine reveals that the top 10% of all prescribers account for 63% of all prescriptions. Do you see why this is messed up? Certain doctors prescribe a ridiculous amount of drugs, but what motivates these practices? Doctors are mostly paid by the hospitals and clinics they work at, but many are also directly paid by brands. A ProPublica study analyzed the 50 most prescribed brand name in Medicare, and these brands all have financial ties with many doctors, and personally reward doctors who prescribe more medication. The study found that for 46 out of the 50 brands, associated doctors who receive payments from the brands prescribed 58% more medication than doctors who did not receive any payment. That's clear corruption right there. But wait, there's more. Here's a map which illustrates the prescribing records from an IQVIA database. States like Arkansas prescribe drastically higher doses of opioids than states like California. Data also shows that some states issue long-term prescriptions much more frequently than other states. The same database also reveals that subscribing to Dumanity can increase IQ. The greed and desire for profits in pharmaceutical companies is further revealed by its relentless marketing strategies, portraying their products as a magic pill.
Tried 2-layer Ambien CR.
One prescription Nexium pill a day.
Talk to your doctor about Chantix and
take your Toprol XL every day.
Every year, the pharmaceutical industry pours billions into marketing strategies like sponsored conferences or direct advertising towards consumers. And guess what? It really works. In 2000, 8.2% of US adults took 5 or more medications. In 2012, that number nearly doubled to 15%. And you really need to ask yourself, did the rate of health problems and mental disorders really double in 12 years? Or are we merely falling victim to these billion-dollar companies? And local pharmacy chains also take part in this evil industry. CVS and Walgreens are the biggest pharmacy chains in America, and they both have been exposed by the US Department of Justice for wrongfully filling opioid prescriptions. Walgreens was actually recently exposed for this in 2025. They filled millions of invalid opioid prescriptions starting from 2012 to 2023, and are now being forced to pay $300 million to settle the claims. You might be wondering, just how bad are the prescription drugs that pharmaceutical companies market so heavily? Surely they can't be that bad, right? Well, you might be surprised to find a large portion of common prescription medications closely resemble illegal drugs, with many being secretly sold in the black market because they're so addictive. Let me show you exactly what substances the pharmaceutical companies are selling that's getting so many Americans addicted. On a side note, I'm not trying to scare you away from getting medication. Please do your own research and ask your doctor if you believe you need it. Let's start off with the addictive medication that's so common, you or someone you know probably takes it. ADHD medication. Approximately 3.3 million US children are prescribed this, and you'll see why this is a big problem. ADHD is commonly treated with a category of stimulant substances called amphetamines. Dizoxin is a commonly prescribed amphetamine for ADHD, and I'm not kidding when I say it's literally the same kind in Breaking Bad. As you can expect, dizoxin has high potential for abuse and addiction, which makes you wonder, why is it so commonly prescribed? I mean, the fact that dizoxin is illegal in every country except the US is very telling. Other medications like Adderall can also be harmful and can cause heart disease, high blood pressure, seizures, and a lot more. You've probably heard of Adderall before, but what you might not know is that Adderall looks like this, and amphetamine looks like this. Here's an interview that reveals what Adderall addiction is like.
It gives me an exhilarating feeling that I've never had with anything else before. And I've tried at this point in my life most and I feel like I'm Superman. Like I can think anything, I can do anything I want. I immediately from that point told myself I want that, and I want that more than anything.
And things like Vyvanse, Avecchio, and Dexedrine are also used to treat ADHD, and they have similar harmful effects. A large variety of withdrawal symptoms can happen when users attempt to quit.
My anxiety started to creep in. My anxiety triggered my depression, and I got really depressed. I was laughing with friends and half serious that, hey, I'm just gonna go walk into traffic. Didn't realize that, hey, I haven't taken my Adderall for about 2 weeks, and the only thing that's not in my life right now is Adderall. Like, how is this happening to me?
Now, there's nothing wrong with taking ADHD medication if someone absolutely needs it to function. The problem arises when we give these risky drugs to people who don't really need it. With the rise of screen technology like social media and video games, many have developed shortened attention spans, leading them to believe they have ADHD when they really don't. An ADHD diagnosis can be very flawed. Instead of clinically examining the brain with technology, an ADHD diagnosis is purely based on questionnaires and behavioral tests. That means anyone with a shortened attention span from doom scrolling too much can get diagnosed with ADHD, even if their brain is completely normal. In 1997, 6.1% of US children aged 3 to 17 were diagnosed with ADHD. In 2022, that number nearly doubled to 11.4%, or approximately 7 million children. This data correlates with the rise of short-form content like TikTok and addictive video games that mess up people's attention spans, leading them to falsely get diagnosed for ADHD. Now, ADHD medication can be harmful, but they don't even come close to this next prescription drug. And this one can easily kill you if misused. Benzodiazepines. In 2019, benzodiazepines were prescribed 92 million times. These are used to alleviate panic attacks from anxiety disorders, as well as help those with insomnia. The problem is that benzodiazepines are very addictive because they create a euphoric sense of pleasure and relaxation. Here's Eminem talking about his benzodiazepine addiction.
Xanax, Valium, tomato. I don't know at what point exactly it started to be a problem. I just remember liking it more and more. Coming off of everything, I literally was up 24 hours a day for 3 weeks, not sleeping. I had to regain motor skills. I had to regain talking skills.
Benzodiazepines are only safe when taken short term, for 2 to 4 weeks max. However, long-term prescribing of benzodiazepines accounts for 30 to 40% of the use, and this can lead to serious brain damage. A study done by the University of Colorado found that 1 in 5 long-term users develop benzodiazepine-induced neurological dysfunction, with symptoms like low energy, memory loss, and increased risk of dementia. To make matters even worse, benzodiazepines are often ranked as one of the hardest to quit. The withdrawal symptoms can be brutal, even for individuals on a low dose. I'm not going to read this entire list, but as you can see, it's not fun.
Her words, a window into the hell that is withdrawal from years of Xanax.
Horrific. It's like being tortured alive. The symptoms are endless. Burning skin, nerve pain. I wanted to die. Every day I wanted to die. I was fighting for my life.
Akathisia is a very common and painful withdrawal symptom, and this is what it can look like.
You gonna be okay? Gonna pass.
Going cold turkey from benzodiazepines can actually kill you, and it can take up to a year to fully recover from the withdrawals. According to research published on the Wiley Library, only a third of benzodiazepine prescriptions in older adults are appropriate. This shows how millions are needlessly suffering from benzodiazepine addiction, all because their doctors were irresponsible with their prescription. For most cases of insomnia and mild anxiety, there is a large variety of safer medication options that can be just as effective. Now let me ask you a question. What's worse than benzodiazepines? If your answer is McDonald's chicken nuggets, then you're not wrong. They taste horrible, but a better answer would be opioids. Now I mentioned that opioids are addictive earlier, but just how dangerous are they? Well, according to the CDC, 1 in 4 long-term prescription opioid users will become severely addicted. Long-term use of opioids can lead to liver damage, kidney damage, risk of heart problems, lung problems, and brain damage. And opioids are also extremely hard to quit, with terrible withdrawals. In this TED Talk, Travis Ryder describes what opioid withdrawals are like.
I became nauseated, lost my appetite, I ached everywhere, basically stopped eating, and I barely slept at all, and trying violently to throw up, despite not having eaten anything in days.
I understand that some injuries can be extremely painful, but remember, there are many safer alternatives to opioids. That brings us to today's second sponsor, Tylenol. Okay, I'm not actually sponsored by Tylenol, but seriously, please consider Tylenol or Advil before getting opioids. Now let's talk about a harmful that's so common, even Elon Musk and Oprah Winfrey are on it, Ozempic. Ozempic is an NLP-1 that helps aid in weight loss, and prescriptions have skyrocketed by 300% from 2022 to 2023 alone. According to Healthline, a whopping 13% of US adults have previously tried NLP-1 and 6% are currently taking one. Ozempic is very effective for treating type 2 diabetes. The problem arises when people use this simply to lose weight. Qualifications for Ozempic are very loose, and more than half of all US adults are able to get prescribed Ozempic. Why is this a problem? Because depending on the person, many people can face serious side effects from these substances, like severe stomach pain, nausea, acute kidney injury, vomiting, diarrhea, gallbladder problems, and the list goes on. And Ozempic doesn't even fix the root problem of obesity. Most people who take the continue their unhealthy diet of high cholesterol, sugar, and preservatives, along with their unhealthy exercise habits. This means that as soon as they quit their NLP-1 they will quickly gain all the weight back. Now, Ozempic is dangerous, but not as dangerous as this next antidepressants. These have surged in popularity, and it's very likely that someone close to you is on them. According to the CDC, 13.2% of US adults use antidepressants. Antidepressants can be beneficial and save lives, but the problem arises when people are misdiagnosed and take the wrong antidepressant. SSRIs can potentially come with a multitude of side effects, like insomnia, skin rashes, headaches, joint or muscle pain, nausea, and diarrhea. For long-term users, 72% experienced sexual dysfunction, 65% experienced weight gain, 65% felt emotionally numb, and 36% reported caring less about other people. In rare cases, certain antidepressants can cause manic and psychotic episodes. A notorious example of this is Donald Shell, who did not show any signs of homicidal behavior or desire to end himself before taking Paxil, an antidepressant that consists of paroxetine. But in February of 1998, Donald was prescribed Paxil, and only a few weeks later, he went on a murderous rampage, killing his wife, daughter, granddaughter, and then himself. The jury found that the drug was 80% responsible for these deaths. Antidepressants are commonly used to treat chemical imbalances in those with depression, but the criteria to diagnose depression are very loose, and a significant amount of people will fit these criteria without having any chemical imbalances. Being depressed and having a chemical imbalance are two completely different things, but the medical industry treats them like they're the same thing. This means that millions are needlessly taking antidepressants. Here's a real doctor talking about this.
Medical providers have given up on trying to figure out why people are unhappy and how to fix it. Instead, what we're seeing is doctors diagnosing patients on lists of symptoms that don't require any testing. And most doctors simply stop there. They tell you, well, you have depression, as if it explains why you're depressed, and kind of subtly implying that you have some kind of brain disorder. But for many people, this is complete nonsense.
Now, the overprescription problem in America might seem like it's out of our control because pharmaceutical companies have so much power. But now, let's talk about what we do have control over. First off, if you ever plan on getting a prescription, please do your research first. Your doctor knows a lot more than I do, but not every doctor cares about your health as much as they claim to. Just because your doctor prescribes you a doesn't mean that is safe. Trust your doctor's advice, but when it comes to prescriptions, take their words with a grain of salt. Also remember that for most mental disorders like PTSD, OCD, depression, and anxiety, cognitive behavioral therapy can be very effective, and it's always safe. You're not going to overdose on therapy. Many prescriptions are only safe when taken short term, but therapy will keep you healthy and mentally well for the rest of your life. If you have a close friend or family member who is seeking to get prescribed a certain drug, please do a lot of research with them to ensure that the drug is safe before getting the prescription. If you want to support me and my channel, then subscribe right now and like the video because I will be making a lot more amazing high quality videos for you guys, and I want to give you guys great content. So subscribe and I will see you in the next video. Bye!